Monday night comes awfully fast.
Yeah, it does, even after a week off.
You're not kidding. You're not kidding.
Well, we're back.
We're back.
Who are we, Mike?
It's your job. See, I mean, we can't get anything right.
Hey, we're Power and Speed, sitting 908-751-0211.
And liking us on Facebook and iTunes.
Likening?
Liking. I don't know.
Did you get hit with a bat again?
Again.
I want to sleep.
So what's up?
Well, I think we posted a little bit about it. We're on, I guess we're on TuneIn.
Yep.
We're on Google.
We're on the Google?
On the Google. On Android Play.
Yep.
Whatever that is.
No, Google Play.
Google Play?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. I'm not an Android.
Yeah, I know,
Play.
but that's a pretty big deal.
Is it?
Because, well, you know, that day you called me and said, hey, Google picked us up, kind of unrequested.
Yeah, I think somebody might have done that. And it wasn't somebody from here. I think somebody might have recommended it or something.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't do it.
Yeah, I know. I thought Google just did it because we're cool.
Or somebody pushed it through.
It might have been. Either they look for things that are, you know, in Google's world trending. Who knows? So we're in a couple more places now.
Tad is trending.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Trending, all right.
I think.
Oh, my God.
Wow, we got some listeners already. Wow. There's one cat in there that was throwing out contest, theories about driving and stuff.
Oh, are you really going to go down that road?
I really shouldn't.
No. Don't even bother.
We had a group thread.
Here we go.
No, okay, we won't.
Alan, I'm sorry, but you put yourself in a barrel here.
He's not sorry. No, we're not going to talk about it.
Okay.
But it was.
Well, let's talk about your accomplishment, because you were actually quite proud of it, and you sent the picture, and I was like, oh, look at Tom.
Oh, that best reaction time in the Pros versus Joe's race. Yeah, it was good.
So you're not just the slapdick streetcar guy.
No.
You can actually cut a light.
Yeah.
Who did you beat to get there?
Well, I beat a guy from Manly.
Okay.
I beat a guy who I don't remember.
Okay.
And I beat Travis Pastrana.
Okay.
And Ron Capps. And I lost to a unnamed girl. Yeah, in the final.
Well, if Alan beat,
we were all driving Pontiac G6s. It was when they were a sponsor, and so all the cars were supposedly, even.
Yeah.
And you switched cars every run. So if you had a fast one, like if one went, they were, I think, like low 14-second cars.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Or low 15. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't think those things had any chance.
Low
of getting
15-second cars. And, so I'm, 230, and this girl was, I don't know, 110.
What was it, heads up?
Yeah.
Oh, because they were all the same.
They were all the same car. And I had a good one. Because I was watching everybody's times, and I thought I had a shot. And
I would have snuck over to the air compressor and put 100 pounds of air in the tires. I would have done everything.
Well, I mean, you couldn't because you didn't know what car you were going to be in.
Yeah, I guess
the next run.
True.
But yeah, I mean, I put it on her.
But if you were switching cars, you could have let the tires down a lot, and then you would have hurt the other guy. See, you got to work the angles.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I put it on her. I was out 2 cars, and that is the worst feeling in the world. She just drove around me. Never looked because I don't know if she ever raced before.
So you got her on a tree.
Oh yeah, I killed her on a tree, and she just drove around me.
Okay. Well, the reason that we're bringing this up, because now you did this, we got to talk about it a little bit. Alan threatened Tom and me.
And Tad.
And Tad. I will go on record as saying I am not the drag racing guy. I don't go to the track. I don't go make passes. I beat the shit out of my car from traffic light to traffic light. That's about it.
Yep.
Tom, on the other hand, has raced. Tad says he raced.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know what do we want to even try to pry that out of you or no?
What do you want to pry out of me? You should have said I would have brought my.
How many passes do you have?
A couple hundred, maybe.
So you've got some time there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like professional racer, but you got some time there. So Alan has thrown down the gauntlet and challenged all of us to, I guess, just a reaction time contest.
Yeah.
Now,
so let's just get a portraiture.
Well, in fond memory of my father, he used to play the stopwatch game. I think you even played it, Tom, when we were at the shop.
We all have.
He would take a piece of tape, put it over the stopwatch, start it, and hand it to you.
Yep.
When that number changes, push the button.
Yep.
And you'd like to see a 20.
Yep.
Or, a 25.
And I was good at it.
Yeah, you were good at it.
Yep.
I think you actually had a couple that were in the bottom 20s, and I think you even had a 19.
Yep.
because my father kept messing with me. He said, you got to be cheating. Can you see? Are you looking in the side? So I suggested that to Alan. He said no.
Why?
It doesn't simulate the
Horseshit.
experience of being in the car.
So let's buy a practice tree.
We could, but if it does, I mean, maybe you got to shake the seat and do all kinds of stuff so you're simulated.
Making noise.
We got a caller. Let's see if he can help us here a little bit. We also have a guest coming too. We
do.
Talk about that.
Yeah, we should have.
Jason, are you there? Oh, he hung up.
Oh,
Either you dropped them.
No, I hit air. Air puts him on.
Yep.
Jason, call back.
Yeah, call back, dude.
Who's our guest, Tom?
Tonight we're gonna have Mike Abney. He is the Sultan of Sales at NX Nitrous Systems.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
Jason Osborne.
Yep.
Now he hung up again.
Killing me.
I didn't even touch anything.
I know. It was him.
And it worked.
I know.
It absolutely worked when I called. Hang on. Should I call myself? Go ahead. You keep talking. I'm just going to make sure it's working.
So yeah, Mike Abney from NX Nitrous Systems. We're going to talk all questions nitrous. So if people have questions, theories, experiences, Tad,
me too. I have a question. So
do you?
actually, I have more than one. Do they have any nitrous for diesels? NX or no?
That's a very good
great question. He's looking at me like I would know the answer.
Well, you talked to him. I didn't.
Hey, Mike Trooper, you're on the air.
Yeah, it works. Just want to make sure. Well, we actually have a pretty cool phone system.
I know.
Did I talk about this?
What?
Scott Clark said that the first time he listened, he was like, I was absolutely shocked at the audio quality.
Really?
Yeah. He said that it was impressive. He's like, somebody has their shit together.
Yeah.
I was like, thank you.
Yeah, well, you do.
We do have good stuff here. So the phones usually work well, no issues. But that's good. I have a bunch of nitrous questions because it's one of those things, man. It's the mysterious side of doing this.
I know.
It's like torque converters and
It's like dark science.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we know that fuel goes in, nitrous goes with it, and
Stuff happens.
And Tad had a question. I mean, we could talk about it first. How do you quantify 100 horsepower? Are they going by the amount of fuel you inject versus the amount of nitrous?
Yeah, it's a good question for him.
So is it a pound per hour thing? Like if
what RPM basically, but
yeah, and if you added 100, I mean, I can tell you, my stupid ass truck, that black truck I had, Lucifer, you hit that thing with 275 at like 1700,
it
and
launches.
it was just fucking stupid. It was ridiculous what it felt like at 275 because it had a tight converter.
Yep.
It had a street converter.
Yep.
And I didn't really care a lot about the motor.
Nope.
So I hit the thing. Here's Jason Osborne. This guy might be fucking with us. Hang on.
He's
Let me see. Jason, you there?
Yeah, man. My bad. My phone cut out right when you said we got a caller.
That's all right.
Fun.
Last thing I heard, Tom got beat by a girl in a dress.
Yeah, you did hear that. All right, so we'll talk to you again, Jason.
Bud was talking junk about reaction time.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're on board. You're up to speed. So what do you got?
Well, I'm not really much of a drag racer or nothing like that. I'm just a car guy like you guys. Just started listening to your podcast a couple of days ago and really enjoy it and everything. And I was just trying to get y'all's opinion on some of the tuner houses for like the high-end exotic cars, like Brabus and Novatec and all those other ones that, take a $500,000 car and put $500,000 into it.
I'm with Jason because that's insane. I mean, but I guess if you have $500,000 money to buy a $500,000 car, see, that's why
The other half doesn't matter.
The other half doesn't matter.
Right.
See, I'm the guy that's looking at something kind of expensive, but that expensive, that's like a marble polisher. You know what I mean? I'm going to polish that thing because I can't go buy another one.
Right.
But somebody who can buy that and then spend that much in it, that's just ridiculous. I can't. Ugh.
Yeah. And I don't know any of those people.
Don't you know the guys in Carolinas or no?
I remember you just saying something about you just wanted like a production car where everything was turned up to 11.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I don't know, I don't know nobody that has one of those or drove one of those, so I wouldn't know if the mannerisms, like you like to say, are the same as a production car. But I would imagine with maybe some of the like Brabus stuff or something like that,
Well, the underground stuff that's what you're talking about. I mean, you could buy a Lambo.
You're talking about the Lambos and all that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff apparently.
Nobody mentions the Novatec. Nobody mentions the Novatec twin supercharged Ferraris.
That's a new one on me. I've never heard of them.
Your boy Adam Carolla had Peter North on his car cast, and he had his Novatech F430 out there.
See, I
You
brought
said the magic word.
Yeah,
you said Adam
Adam
Carolla.
Carolla.
you know,
Yeah,
you
Mike
guys
just
are
got hard.
douchebags.
Oh, I know. That's why I mentioned him. I'm a Carolla fan, too, you know what I'm
Listen,
saying?
Adam's podcast is great. The
I know,
car
it
one,
is.
the car one can be a little tough.
He rambles about tires too much on the car one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but I got to give Adam credit. He is absolutely 100% a car guy. It's like I think half of what he does is driven to get more money to buy more car stuff.
Yeah,
I mean
probably.
that's kind of how he is.
Openly admits that, he's got them Paul Newman Datsuns and all that stuff he's got to work on. And, that Motec crap ain't cheap. So,
That's for sure.
I'm sure he's got no problem with it. But yeah, see that kind of thing, like to listen to a guy. I think the reason that we don't know about what is it, Novatech?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't hear about.
German tuning house that do Ferraris.
Yeah, see, I mean, Tom, how many people you know of Ferraris? I know one.
Yeah, I know.
I know one, and I really know him through somebody else.
Yep.
I understand, but you got 2,500 horsepower GTRs.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, at 2,500, I don't think they have the mannerisms that Mike was talking about. But
I know. You can't drive that thing every day. I know.
no, but you certainly could at 14, 15 wheel. So,
Yeah.
which is still insane.
Tom,
I remember what y'all saying. The guys nowadays with 1,000 or 1,200 is laughable.
Yeah, it's a joke. Yeah.
and I mean, I had a conversation just the other day about those exact cars with Tom because I was like, are they really drivable at 1,000 to 1,300 horsepower? And he's like, yeah. He's like, you can drive them around like nothing.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I would like, but I don't want it in that wrapper.
Yeah, that's all right.
I understand. I know your Corvette. You like the yellow cars with the black tops.
This guy listened a little too much.
Yeah, he did.
I just caught up on all of them. I just started Thursday, and I banged out so many. You know what I'm saying? And
That's
I'm
awesome.
gonna call in and give Crunch of what's going on, fellas, and all that stuff.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to ruin it for you. You're gonna,
I know he's coming back. He's couldn't get there, had the delivery and all that stuff.
yeah, I'd actually welcome Crunch back whenever he'd like to take a few nights out and come up.
Yeah.
Because he was always fun to talk to. I enjoy his personality quite a bit.
Yep.
All right, man. Well, listen, I'm glad you liked the show.
Where are you from, Jay?
North Carolina,
Okay.
Salisbury. It's like 20 minutes from Charlotte.
Yep. I know the area.
Good deal.
Oh, it's race car country down here.
Hell yeah, I've been there a couple times.
All right. Well, next time you come, man, you should bring that sweet Smith and Wesson with the Colt barrel.
Oh man.
Oh, man.
Took some notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna rip on Tad a little bit, but I think Marco did that well enough when he was tearing up Subarus.
This guy really pays attention.
Well, next time I go down, I am going to bring.
Look, I'm just a regular guy. I'm not a drag racer. I don't even own anything worth talking about. It's just that I'm a car guy. I love cars.
Well, next time I'm in the Carolinas, I'm actually going down to shoot with a relative of mine. So I am going to be bringing some stuff down there. So we'll talk about on the show prior.
Sounds awesome. I'll bring my Glock.
Listen,
right.
man, you were a great caller. Thanks for calling.
Oh yeah, thanks, Jay.
All right, man. Y'all have a good night.
See ya.
Yep.
And it's nice to have a nice
Nice one for the
caller like
books.
that.
Yeah, he was good.
He really listened a
Yeah,
lot.
He did. That was good.
Picked on me about Adam Carolla, picked on Ted.
Yeah.
If he started to tool on Grey's Anatomy, I was going to have to dump him.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, you want to make the introduction?
Yeah. Well, like I said, let's say hello. Hey, Mike, you're on the air.
Yes, sir.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. This is Mike from NX Nitrous Systems. It's great to have you on board. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you were listening in the beginning, but we have a lot of questions for you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, first of all, why don't you start off and tell us about the company, where you guys are headed, kind of what you got going on.
Well, Nitrous Express, we manufacture nitrous systems for every kind of internal combustion engine, all the way from gasoline applications to diesels and motorcycles, trucks, race cars, whatever. As far as where we're heading, we always try to make the most cutting-edge nitrous products possible. We do a lot of playing with parts and testing and whatnot, and we try to push the envelope and make better parts all the time.
Well, that's awesome. Who and I'd imagine you have a couple car guys that work for you.
Well, that's one of the deals that we've learned. if you're not a car guy, you really don't fit in around Nitrous Express. So, yeah, we've pretty much exclusively got car guys working for us.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, you kind of just don't get it if you're not ready to push a button on something. I can understand it.
Yep.
I remember I got to tell a funny story that I had used nitrous in a vehicle before, specifically my truck. That was the first thing that had something in it. Back in those days, it was like some kind of 275 horsepower plate kit, which I think is touchy back then to begin with. And it was a stock bottom, and it was, and I talked a little bit about it before, but that thing had a stock converter. So you'd hit that thing at like 15 or 16 or 1700, and it was ungodly what it would do, probably because of the amount of torque multiplication, the amount of torque that's made based on the fuel you're putting in. So that kind of brought me right into the first question. How do you determine how much horsepower is in a kit? Is it because of the brake specific, the pound of fuel that goes in to go with the nitrous?
Well, the horsepower level is determined by how much nitrous goes in, and then depending on what the fuel pressure is, we jet it accordingly to provide the right amount of fuel for that amount of nitrous. For the most part, you can add a certain amount of nitrous, let's say 100 horsepower worth of nitrous, and it'll typically make that same amount of power, whether it's on a V8 or a four-cylinder or whatever.
And does it make that 100 no matter what RPM it is? Like, in other words, and I know that's kind of a strange way to put it, but I'm trying to figure out if, because you're burning X amount of fuel with nitrous over a given time, like almost, I guess the easiest way for people to understand it is the reason that the truck felt so ridiculous at 275 at low RPM is because it would be like if you had a diesel.
How much torque you're making.
And you jumped another 200 into it at 2000. It's huge.
Yep.
Sure. Well, that's one of the things about nitrous. It's going to make the same amount of power regardless of the RPM. So, if you hit it at really low RPM, it's putting in whatever it's jetted at. It's going to make a lot more torque at really low RPMs.
Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that's what I started to get into with this the first time. And Anthony, of all things, Anthony DeSoma, when he had brought a 406 over that he wanted to shoot on a dyno. Never did that before. And when you hit something, I think back then it was like a 400 horsepower, like direct nozzle kit.
Mm-hmm.
And when you turn that thing on, it was amazing. Yeah. And I can imagine what people do now because we never did that stuff. It was, super stock, and nothing like that.
But did they make the advertised horsepower on the dyno?
To be honest with you, it was so long ago and it was so hectic to do because you're not used to doing it.
Yeah, you're just trying to control the dyno, right?
Yeah. I think we were just like happy that it didn't break. I think is really what it came down to.
So, I'll ask you that, Mike. Do they typically make the advertised number, or is that how does that number play into the real dyno number?
Yeah, we through years of making nitrous systems and dynoing it and whatnot, we've developed our horsepower ratings. So typically, if we say it's going to make 100 horsepower on our jet card, it'll typically make that amount of power on the dyno.
Okay, that makes sense. I remember in the old days. I don't know how old you are, but I'm pretty old. And back in the day of like Marvin Miller and the first nitrous guys, they didn't make the advertised number. At least that's how I remember it. But I figured nowadays they probably got to come close, or you'd get shit from a lot of people.
Lots of things have changed in the last 20 years. One of the big things that's really cool nowadays is we've got electronic controllers. So, you were talking about earlier how much power nitrous will make at low RPM. Well, that's absolutely true. But at the same time, you don't necessarily, if you're putting a lot of nitrous on an engine, you don't want to activate it at really low RPMs because it's very strenuous on rods and things like that. So with the electronic controllers we have nowadays, we can automatically limit the nitrous or keep it from activating until you reach a certain RPM.
Yeah, and they flutter the solenoids and everything, right?
Well, see, that nice, again, and I don't mean to hijack or interrupt, but like Anthony's thing, and if you notice, I'm being very careful not to say brands or anything like how it worked. And I know they have a generic term for port kits, but that type of kit just had a pair of solenoids or 4 solenoids just came on.
Yep.
And there was no modulating. So is that really how the progressive kits work? And actually a listener just wrote in, are people gravitating towards progressive controllers rather than the second, third, and fourth kit. And I imagine that ties exactly on what we're talking about. Do they actually pulse a solenoid like an injector?
That's exactly right. To answer the listener's question, yes, we're for sure seeing a shift. People are starting to run larger systems, and then they're using a progressive controller to bring on the power gradually versus 3 or 4 systems like you would see back in the day.
Yeah, with a bunch of timers set up.
Right.
Yep.
And so with our progressive controller, we actually vary the pulse width just like a fuel injector. And it'll allow us to bring the nitrous in softly, so you can set it up based on a number of variables, but time is a very popular way of bringing the nitrous in. You can bring it in to where you're just on the edge of traction, but not so much power that you're spinning.
Now there's a question on that. What is the range? I'm trying to figure out how to verbalize this question. Like, if you had a 500 horsepower kit, can you turn it down to 50? I mean, is there an operating window of what you can expect if the kit was at quote unquote its maximum?
Some of that depends on the nitrous systems or the nitrous solenoids that are being used, but just generally, we can limit the nitrous down to about 30% of whatever the system is jetted for. And then we ramp up from there, and it ramps up to around 70 or 80% or so, and then we normally bring the nitrous to 100% at that point.
Well, so you can get down to 30. So if you have a 1,000 horsepower system, you could start off at 300.
Exactly.
That's impressive.
Sure is.
Oh yeah.
I could tell this is going to this.
Our guys are using that.
Yeah, I was going to say I could tell Mike's going to be the kind of guy that we're going to end the show later, and we're going to be saying, "Man, we had so many more questions for him."
Well, it was kind of funny because I mean, I had a lot of the typical car guy mysterious questions, and and don't get me wrong, some of the listeners, their exposure to nitrous oxide is some guy pushing a button on the Fast and the Furious stupid movie.
Nos,
oh. Yeah. And they don't understand, but I mean, I'm getting an education here on some of the stuff like the pulsing of the solenoids. And I knew that when he talked about progressive controllers, I know that's what they meant. But now, have the solenoids, have they gotten into, like, are your solenoids designed differently to work specifically with a pulse system? Like, is the, for lack of a better term, the valve weight lighter to make it more responsive? I mean, how has that come to be?
Absolutely. There are things that we have done in our solenoids to make them compatible with progressive controllers.
Okay.
And he's probably not going to talk about them?
In the nitrous side. But yeah, back in the day when you would use a progressive controller, some of the solenoids would have some issues with that, and some companies would actually recommend a safety solenoid in line, so if you did have an issue. But we're way past that with our solenoids. We design them differently than the solenoids that we're having issues, and guys can run our solenoids for many, many years, and the progressive just doesn't do damage to them.
See, that's actually, I just got a listener who's listening, and he can't actually post a message, but he asked just exactly that question, and it was funny. He was asking it before he's going to hear it, but he wanted to know if the progressives seem to hurt the life of a solenoid. So, I mean, I guess you got your answer, Jeff. No, at least with NX, no.
All right, I got 2 questions from. Well, I'll just ask one for now, but we got a listener that wants to know: do you guys have a formula for a single jet, wet or dry, versus a direct port system? Like, if a guy, I guess you probably know what he means. Does he mean if he wanted 300 horsepower in a single jet versus a port system? Is there a formula to figure out? I don't know.
Absolutely, there is. It's super simple. It's jet size times the number of jets, and then whatever that number is, you take the square root of that, and that will give you the equivalent single jet that would flow the same as your 8 jets in a direct port.
Holy shit. All right, that's great.
So it really just comes down to overall jet area then, huh?
Yeah.
It does. Now, with the direct ports, they will typically hit a little softer because there's some area after the solenoids that you have to fill up before it really starts putting the nitrous in the engine. And direct ports will have better distribution cylinder to cylinder, so you can normally run a lot more nitrous safely.
And I remember that, and that's worth that's worth talking about so people understand that. I would imagine that one of the tuning aids that could be used would be length of tubing between, correct? Because I mean, and I'm just
that was a question too that a listener had.
Yeah.
yeah, the tubing length between a solenoid and a nozzle.
Yeah, is it
because-
important that they're close to equal or?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we have some customers that are not able to run electronics at all, and for those customers, we've actually increased the volume of the tubing between the jet and the nitrous solenoid to soften the hit. So absolutely, that does have an effect.
And then once it catches up, it'll obviously make the same power, but you're actually softening it by creating more area in the tubes.
Sure.
That's crazy.
Nowadays, it's more popular to do all of that electronically with a progressive controller,
Sure.
but absolutely, it can be done mechanically.
See, I know that because a car that we had
Yeah.
that had a extremely long solenoid to nozzle line.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it was extremely
Yeah.
like
under the dashboard.
like ridiculously. And that it was a little bit of a challenge because if you turn the kit on and the way that this one worked, it pushed down on the fuel pressure regulator to drive the fuel pressure up. This is, I mean, I don't even know if they still do it that way, but there was like a bleed off jet and a T, and it would push down on a regulator to just bring your fuel pressure up. And here's how it's all supposed to work.
Yep.
To me, I think that was always kind of hokey. It might still be the preferred method to make it easy, but that thing was so funny because I actually had to get a timed relay to slow down how quick the fuel side came on, because it would come on and flood because it took, there was that much duration between energizing it and actually reaching the manifold.
Yep.
It was funny.
Wow. Yeah, I got another question. Is it better to run a big system with a lot of timing retard or a smaller system with no timing retard? Like what would work better in a turbo? If that makes sense.
There's a gazillion questions to go along with that, but I'll let him get into that.
Okay, so I don't know if those two necessarily tie together in my mind. There's going to be a certain amount of timing or a certain zone that you can get up in timing, and it's not going to affect the overall mile an hour very much. So in that zone, I'd prefer to have somebody on the low side of timing if they're not going to vary power very much. I prefer that more from a safety point of view. So once you get your car tuned, if you go out the next time and you have a bad batch of gas or something like that, you have some safety margin of timing there. So I really don't recommend our customers be on the ragged edge of timing. I'd rather them be a little bit lower on timing. Just to
Safety margin.
Yeah, as a safety margin.
That makes sense.
And you see, on the ignition timing side, I imagine that when you have detonation with nitrous, that it's unrecoverable.
Yeah, usually fatal.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. It doesn't damp itself. It doesn't pass through an RPM range that it gets better. It's got to be pretty. So I mean, what I'm trying to say is, I guess you can't start it. It can't ever start to detonate or ping. Correct?
Yeah. It is very important that you are not running this thing while it's detonating. One of the things that's crucial, the guys that have the ability to monitor pan vacuum and stuff like that, that's a pretty good thing to monitor. You can actually see pan vacuum will start to go more to the positive side when you start to get ring flutter. And when you start to see that, that's a telltale sign. You better back it off.
Yeah, that's a really, I didn't even think about that.
I didn't think of that either.
That's a pretty good way to gauge what's going on the cylinder without like a pressure gauge or anything like that.
Yep.
Now on the ignition timing, and these are all the things that I heard. Obviously, you can have too little timing, but is there, like, if the guideline is, I mean, everybody seems to have a guide. We're going to add 100. You're going to take out X. 200, take out X plus. And continue. Is there a point that stops?
Every engine's different. So we do recommend to start with the general 4 degrees per 100 horsepower rule. But normally when you put on a out-of-the-box nitrous system, we set them up on the rich side. We do that for the guy that may have his carburetor jetted extremely lean. We're doing it just as a safe starting point. So we normally recommend to start to lean the system out until the plugs look good. And then once you get to that point, it's kind of the same time you can start to possibly creep a little more timing back into it. But as you're leaning it out and looking at the mixture, you also would look at the heat mark on the ground strap, timing mark, and you would start to put a little more timing back into it. And ultimately, for the average guy, we recommend to run your timing mark in the corner of the bend on the ground strap of the spark plug.
Okay. Now,
there's a little more gain to be had. You can run a little more heat in it and get that timing mark more towards the threads of the plug. But for your average guy, we just have them stop putting in timing when the heat mark is in the corner of the bend.
Okay. Now, on that side of things, if the timing is too retarded, does it get, progressively harder on the exhaust side? I mean,
sure. I mean, if you're running extremely retarded, you still got a smoldering mixture running past the open exhaust valve. So we don't recommend to be extremely retarded. We recommend to be, kind of right in the sweet spot there. But normally, looking at the ground strap on the spark plug is a good place to start. And if you're right in the corner of the bend, you're going to be in a good safe zone that'll still perform well.
That's really great information.
Yeah, people, and we've never talked about reading a spark plug.
Yeah, we haven't.
I remember one of the guys that was more of a turbo guy than anything else used to tell me about plated versus non-plated plugs for taking a reading, that it was, it was nicer to read one or the other if you're really trying to get like an idea.
Probably unplated, no?
I thought plated was better because it burned the plating off.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of guys that prefer that.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
I got another. You don't mind that we're just firing questions at you, do you? Are you?
No,
that's what we do.
What we do.
So what is the best way for nitrous to help spool a turbo? Like the placement of the nozzle, do you just run it into the engine? Do you run it into the compressor? So I'm asking because I have no idea.
Well, that really, I'd like to divide this in two different engine types.
Okay.
Diesel and gasoline.
Okay, cool.
We do a lot of turbo diesel stuff, so I'm going to start there and then I'll go to gas. On the turbo diesel stuff, we liked putting the nitrous nozzle right in front of the compressor and actually firing the nitrous into the wheel. Doing that will help spool the turbo a lot.
So firing it right at the wheel.
Yep.
Okay.
A lot of times on diesels we'll have it split up. We'll have two different stages with our progressive controller, and we'll bring in some of the nitrous in front of the compressor wheel, and then we'll also bring in another part of the nitrous just in the boost tube between the intercooler and the actual engine itself.
All right. So when you hit a diesel just on a compressor wheel, that is only nitrous.
Right. That's kind of why it's separated diesel and gasoline. With diesels, we're just spraying nitrous, and you're using the engine. You're just increasing the fuel of the engine to compensate for the nitrous. With a gas application, it's different. And then we can kind of break the gas into two different areas. You got your dry nitrous gasoline applications, and then you've got a wet nitrous system gasoline application. If you've got a dry system with a aftermarket ECU that adds fuel to compensate for the nitrous, it'd be perfectly acceptable to put a little bit of nitrous in front of the compressor wheel. However, on a carb application or something that doesn't have an aftermarket ECU with nitrous fueling control, then I would recommend a wet system. And with a wet system, I would just have it in front of the throttle body in a single nozzle or in the intake in a direct port application.
So you're literally just making more power, more exhaust, and that will increase it'll shorten the spool, but it's just kind of doing it the right way or that way.
Yeah, I mean, in either one of those ways of doing it, it will greatly reduce spool time. Nitrous and turbos were made for each other. Lots of guys that have great big turbos and it takes them 10 seconds to spool, they can cut that down to a couple of seconds. That's without having to go in on a bump box or anything like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd imagine if you could hit the thing with another, 300 foot-pounds of torque, even probably don't even need that. You just got to start the reaction.
Well, it's the exhaust gas load that really starts to spool it better.
And you
right?
see, I thought I heard someone tell me that they used to use nitrous to spool the turbo in the exhaust side. Is that possible?
There's some guys who actually try to do that. We personally don't really get into that side of it. We normally just put the nitrous in on the intake side, but you don't have to put very much nitrous at all. I mean, some of these guys are putting in 50 horsepower worth of nitrous and it's cutting the spool time in half.
Yeah, because I would imagine, like I said, it just has to help it over the hump, and then it'll start to go. You got to get the turbo moving.
Yep. Then everything happens.
Interesting.
That is cool. What about E85?
We like E85. Unfortunately, I don't have E85 in my hometown, or else I'd be running it on my own car. But if you do have E85 available, it's a great fuel to use with nitrous. It's inexpensive. It works great with nitrous. We actually have jetting maps for E85 for all of our nitrous systems. So, customer has one of our systems, they can call in. We can give them the exact jets to run for E85, and it'll run perfect out of the gate.
Okay, so you just need to jet it way up because it's E85, and EGTs will be back to normal.
Yeah, you do have to jet it up.
Yeah.
It's not near as much as you would in a methanol application, but you do have to run a larger fuel jet than gasoline.
Okay. Tad?
Yes.
I
Well,
guess-
he already got me on my diesel questions, unfortunately.
Oh, so you're done for tonight? All right. Good night, Tad.
Poor Tad. I got to defend him a little bit
I
here.
know.
He was in here earlier, and I was riding him. I said, "What questions do you have for Nitrous Guy?" "I don't know." And I'm like, "Seriously, Dad, you got anything?" "No." And I was like, "Well, let's talk about this for a minute." And then he's like, "Oh, diesels." And then
Yep.
the guy goes right into diesels.
Yeah.
And this is like the third or fourth time he's actually put a question together, and a guy got to him ahead of time. That's
Yep.
great. All right, I have one from my perspective that, and you want to talk about this, not talk about this. Can you hurt a motor being too rich? Like from the nitrous perspective?
Oh yeah, you definitely can. It's important that the mixture's right. If you're overly rich, you can tear something up as quick or quicker than being on the lean side. So it is important that the jetting is correct.
And, all right, now from the melting perspective, and hurting the motor perspective, is there a location around the piston or a particular area that any condition would tell you? Like, in other words, if you were lean, is it here? Is it timing? Is it here? Or does timing and lean go hand in hand? If it's rich, does it show something else?
Well, if you're overly rich, you'll have things like broken ringlands and whatnot. But as you lean the system out, it does produce more heat. So, back in the day, everybody said you can't run the nitrous system lean. That's what will tear things up. And although a lot of people tore stuff up back in the old days, it was really more the timing that's tearing things up. So as you lean a system out, it'll still run awesome lean. And that is the general trend in nitrous, is we're running them leaner and leaner. But you also, at the same time, you've got to retard timing. And if you don't, you're on a lot of timing and running lean, that's when you'll have an issue.
Okay.
But if you follow our tuning tips, you won't have any issues at all. We definitely tune on the safe side, but it will still make good power. And then for the guys that really want to push the envelope, we work with them a little differently and run them a little bit leaner. We're doing a lot of flow work nowadays, and we're flowing it to a lot leaner nitrous to fuel ratios than we ever did in the old days.
And
So-
is that because of the benefit of the later model nozzles or getting mixed better? Is that what that's for?
Well, not really. It's just really a general trend in tuning. Everybody's finding that you can run them leaner with low amounts of timing, and they'll run better on the big end. So, nowadays when we flow a nitrous system, we still give the customer all of his, rich nitrous to fuel ratio stuff that we start out with, as rich as even 5.5 to 1 nitrous to fuel ratio. But we also give them all of the data so they can run as lean as 10 to 1 nitrous to fuel ratio.
Wow. It's really come a long way. It's obvious.
Oh yeah.
It really has. I got another one from another listener, actually from Dave Lacalio at Head Games, the owner of Head Games. He's famous in my world. Nitrous on a Honda. Does bore size hurt nitrous systems for some reason? Because they have extremely small bores, 80 millimeter, 81 millimeters. Is it detrimental in some way?
Well, man, we've done a lot of nitrous on really small displacement engines. However, if you put nitrous on something like a big block, it's going to be a lot more forgiving to a lot of nitrous.
Okay, so you just have to kind of cut it down accordingly, just from a volumetric standpoint.
I mean, for a general rule of thumb, it's very easy to tune 50% of the engine's power. So, like, for instance, if the engine's making 200 horsepower, you could safely put 100 horsepower on it, and it would be very easy to tune and whatnot.
So
Above that, it's no problem. We do it all the time, but it would be more important for your tune-up to be spot on if you're going to try to spray 200 horsepower worth of nitrous on a 200 horsepower engine.
So is it, just to clarify, does the bore size matter? Like if you had an engine that was 400 inches big bore short stroke, or big stroke short or small bore, is one, like, I guess maybe what we're trying to ask is, like, does propagation of the flame, is it affected by a smaller bore? Is there something, like, just is there a combination that might be easier? Or if not, just say no.
Or is it just a displacement thing?
Yeah, it might just be a displacement thing.
Generally, the bigger the engine, the easier it is to tune with nitrous. So I'm sure there's a lot of variables that go into that, but I always err on I'd rather have big displacement any day of the week.
Well, it does make sense too.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're just filling a cylinder with ultra high pressure stuff. So it's probably harder to control when you have less volume to work with.
Yeah, makes sense.
And control's control.
Well, it's a percentage of what the motor makes, just like you said.
Yeah.
You know, if you got something that makes 2,000 horsepower, 100 horsepower is nothing.
Yeah.
It's a small percentage. All right, I get it. Aaron from Australia.
Yeah.
He actually asked amount of timing, like, so I guess timing differential between gasoline and E85. Is the retardation amount the same?
Ultimately, you'll normally be able to run more timing on an E85 application. We still recommend to start with that 4 degrees per 100 horsepower number, and then same deal. It really tunes very similar to gasoline. Looking at the plugs, you want to get as much timing as you can as possible without moving the timing mark towards the threaded part of the plug.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I would have thought that too. I got to ask this: is E85 less forgiving? Like, because I know, like kind of what you said with alcohol. With nitrous and with alcohol, you get leaner. They get better. Alcohol, you have a very small window. Mm-hmm. When you get lean, if you were using it in a race motor, it's melted. It happens that quick. They get better and better up to the point that they break. Is E85 more or less forgiving in the tune-up?
When you're running nitrous, the cooling effect of the E85 is a great benefit. So okay. I want to say an E85 engine is more forgiving than a gasoline application. But the thing you got to watch with the E85, if you've got your car set up for that, is depending on the percentage of ethanol and gasoline, it might change from week to week or station to station. So, with nitrous, it's important that your mixture is the same all the time. So if you're going to run E85, you need to get one of those test kits and make sure that you know what the ethanol percentage is, and try to keep that consistent.
Oh, the turbo guys have that same problem, don't they?
Sure.
I'm trying to watch the E85, how much percentage is there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've got a couple more, but I don't want to keep beating on this guy. I really do.
I want to know what the difference between gas and petrol is.
That's an overseas thing. They call things
an Aussie names. Thing.
I know. I know, mate.
I'll just ask this, my last kind of technical question. EGTs, should they be consistent? Should that be like kind of consistent nitrous turbo, what have you? Isn't an optimal EGT an optimal EGT?
Back in the day, we used to look at EGTs more than we do now. In the end, when you look at the plugs, what you were looking at, when you look for the timing mark, that is an indication of how much heat's in the combustion chamber. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important, but ultimately, now I don't really use an EGT gauge to tune anymore.
Okay. But I mean, nitrous as a rule, I was always under the impression, and it could have been completely incorrect, that when you have a good mixture, you should yield about the same amount of VGT, within a reason. I would certainly think that, but I could be completely wrong. I don't.
The guys that still use EGT a lot is the alcohol guys, especially the ones that are want to spray alcohol through the nitrous system as well as alcohol on the engine. And in those cases, it's very popular for those guys to tune on EGTs. And we normally don't recommend to tune to a different EGT on nitrous versus without nitrous. But it's, the thing to watch on pure alcohol applications. A lot of guys will just throw a ton of fuel at it, and you can mistakenly get a high elevated EGT rating, and it's really just from excess fuel burning in the pipes. So you got to watch out for that.
Sure.
What about compression ratio? Like, how do you compensate for something that, might be 9-to-1 versus something that's 13-to-1?
Well,
and anywhere in between.
Nitrous loves, I want to call it, fairly high compression ratios. So, you get a 13, 14-to-1 compression engine. Well, that's right at home for nitrous. If you're going to run 16-to-1 compression, then we'll start to talk about how you do the nitrous a little different. But in general, high compression and nitrous work great together.
You know what? I have a question that has come up to me a lot, and I've never been a nitrous expert, but I do know a little bit about engine parts. And a lot of the guys that build big blocks down south have this theory, and it could be right. I'm asking that you can't run a real long rod in a nitrous application because of the dwell time of the piston versus a short rod. Like these guys are running 632s and they try to get a 6385 big block rod in it instead of a 500 long or whatever. Do you have an opinion on that?
Those kind of things we normally leave to our engine building customers.
Yep.
We typically work on making the best quality nitrous delivery components, and then we don't try to get in the middle of their.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer, because that's what we say too. Like if people call us and ask us about rod length in a nitrous engine, and you're right. That's what you have to say, because it's not the business that we're in. We make parts, they make nitrous systems. But
I was going to say, you're really getting into like the cylinder pressure gauge realm of things there.
I know, it's like splitting hairs, but they all swear by it. Like, you got to run a 385 rod because the thing it'll eat itself alive with a long rod because of the dwell time of the piston.
Because the piston hangs out up top too long.
Yeah, for another millisecond.
Connects the rod to the crankshaft.
I know. That's all I ever thought too. But no, I got you, Mike, and I wasn't trying to put you on the spot at all. I really wanted to see if there was a connection. I personally don't believe there is, but it's hard to tell guys that are nitrous experts that, they're wrong when they may not be either. I don't mean you, I mean the engine builders.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't even want to begin to answer that question.
Yeah.
All right. You've been with us a long time, and it's funny because people are actively asking questions. So there's a lot more to this than we're going to be able to get to.
Yeah, we knew that.
But one thing that's come up, and you always hear the term snake oil, okay? And it always bugs me, but I've heard this described both ways as far as the different racing fuels. A nitrous fuel that costs a little more, or a non-nitrous fuel that costs a little less. Is there anything to the fuel components that are quote unquote built for nitrous? Is it more anti-detonation agent? Is there, or I mean, do you not, is that one of those things like, look, we don't make a recommendation on that?
Man, there's a lot of differences in fuels. So I do recommend to err on the high side of octane. But there's a lot more that goes into it too. The specific gravity of the fuel for sure makes a difference in our jetting and whatnot. But if you want to talk about the actual fuels and stuff, I recommend contact one of the fuel manufacturers, and I'm sure they can tell you all kinds of things that we just normally don't get into. But what does affect us is what specific gravity of the fuel you're running, because that can affect our jetting. So,
Sure. Yeah.
there are times with certain fuels that will actually either raise or lower the fuel jet accordingly.
Okay. And that makes sense. I mean, thicker fuel, thinner fuel.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah,
So oxygenated would be considered thinner, and you would have to compensate for it somehow, probably.
Well,
An oxygenated fuel, you'll normally need to either go up on fuel pressure a little bit or run a little bit larger fuel jet.
Okay. Right. Well, we had a listener ask a question kind of like what Mike was asking about Q versus C. So that answers that. That makes perfect sense.
I had a question and it just popped away.
That's old.
Damn it.
That's an old guy thing.
I know. Better get checked.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. It's back. And this is more for me. And this is because I think too much about everything. Obviously, depending on the size of the nitrous kit, the bottle size, 1 or 2 or maybe 3, because I guess you have to be accounting for the pressure drop over the course of the run. Do the progressive controllers ever do anything like where they read the bottle pressure and change?
Compensate?
Yeah, compensate.
So with our progressive controller, we have a couple of different ways of dealing with this. One of the options in our progressive controller, it can actually tie into an aftermarket wideband system, and we can actually target, say, I want to be at 12-to-1 air-fuel ratio. As you run down track and the bottle pressure drops, if the air-fuel ratio is richer, our progressive controller, this is the Maximizer 4 I'm talking about, it can actually pulse the fuel solenoids to cut back on the fuel while leaving the nitrous solenoid on 100%. And that'll actually pull the air-fuel ratio back up to whatever target you've entered in there.
That is badass.
And so I was just going to say exactly that.
Seriously badass.
So they can do a compensation as bottle pressure drops or based on a wideband. That's pretty neat.
The Maximizer, the Nitrous Express Maximizer 4 can. As far as I know, it's one of the only nitrous controllers out there that can actually do that.
You know, and I asked that question. Hang on, I asked that question, and Tom was looking at me like, "What? You know, are you getting into something that maybe you don't want to ask about?"
No, I was thinking I was looking at it like it was a good question. It's a real good question. But wow, that's
We also have the ability to look at a pressure sensor, and you can adjust. You can bring on another stage based on pressure. So it's totally possible if a customer did not have a wideband, they could use our progressive controller, and as the pressure dropped in the bottle, they could add more nitrous on the second stage. But that is something that very few people are actually getting into, that complex tuning. But it definitely can be done with the Maximizer 4.
That's amazing.
You know what amazes me more than even that is how far. Like, I didn't think any of this shit was happening. How far the nitrous systems and you guys specifically at NX have come. It's really mind-boggling.
Yeah, I was proud of myself because I knew that a longer line reduced the hit. I mean, then you get.
I just knew there was 2 different solenoids.
Yeah,
Jesus, that's really cool.
Well, that's one of the cool things about nitrous. You know, that's primarily all we do. We're doing a little bit of water methanol stuff nowadays, but for the most part, we just do nitrous. So, you know, all day we sit back there on the flow bench and we kind of, you know, we'll say, hey, it'd be cool if we try this, and we'll go out and try it and we'll dyno it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But, you know, we just keep playing with things, and, you know, as you fine tune all of this, you end up with a product that is the best it can be.
All right, I got one simple question. If somebody was to put a 100 shot dry system on their car, is it possible that the computer can compensate for that without, and like, you know, obviously you got a computer or a system that will pull timing. Is it possible or safe to just have at it and hope the computer will pull enough timing when needed?
Well, that depends on the car. For instance, let's just take newer Mustangs, 2011 GT Mustang and newer. They have factory widebands. So on those applications, yeah, you can throw a little bit of nitrous in it, and it'll actually add more fuel based on air-fuel ratio ratings. And there's more and more cars that are starting to have factory widebands. So that's a really cool deal for us. We can actually rely on the computer to do a little bit of fine tuning, but for the most part, most vehicles don't do that. And especially your carburetor stuff, you have no control based on air-fuel ratio readings. So that's where it's cool in the Nitrous Express controller, the Maximizer 4, it can actually vary the amount of fuel being delivered to the nitrous system based on air-fuel ratio readings.
Okay, cool.
So it depends on the vehicle.
Yep.
I got one more question, and I promise we'll let the guy go. He probably wants to eat dinner. He's probably like, these guys are killing me. Like you don't do this enough all day long. Specifically, a lot of the people that listen are LS guys. Yeah, I mean, I guess me included. So I guess I'd even say, if you had something like a regular LS type Corvette, dry kit, wet kit, like an entry level kit, do you add enrichment through the computer side? Is it done at the fuel nozzle? I mean, is it fuel pressure? How do you guys handle that?
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up, because the LS is on the other side of the spectrum. As compared to the new Mustangs that have a factory wideband, the LS engines, they don't. So with those, they will not pick up what's going on at wide open throttle as far as their air-fuel ratio goes. So in those applications, unless you're doing some special computer tuning, it's important to run a wet system on those.
Okay.
It's by far on LS stuff, it's way more popular to do it wet. And, we've got some simple throttle body plate systems that'll bolt between the throttle body and the intake. They look great, and they'll make anywhere from as low as 35 horsepower all the way up to 400 extra horsepower. So those are probably our most popular seller. But we also do a lot of direct port stuff on LSs too, where we're putting in nitrous directly in each intake runner.
Yeah, I would imagine putting 400 in a single plate in the snout of the throttle body, that could be distribution touchy as you're starting to lean on it.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know. The only reason I really asked that, I'm not. That thing will blow up by itself. I don't need any help.
Yeah. No. Sure.
I know a lot of our guys are LS guys. That's why I wanted to ask specifically that. So okay, so up to 400 with a wet system in front, so that makes it pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's on a plate. We go up to, technically our direct ports we put on these LSs, they'll go up to 600 horsepower out of the box, and they can go even higher than that.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Well, I guess the last thing to do is plug the shit out of yourself. If you want to give a shout out to any customers you guys deal with, I know I see your stuff on Street Outlaws. I know Tad's personal favorite farm truck always has NX stuff, all over the place. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we work with a lot of great racers, and farm trucks, one of the ones we really enjoy working with. But if anybody ever wants to talk about nitrous, that's what we love to do. So you can just give us a call, Nitrous Express, or visit us at nitrousexpress.com. We'd love to talk to you.
All right, perfect.
What are the chances of us getting you back on the show in a few months? Because I know we're going to get bombed with more questions.
Yeah, we're happy to do it anytime. That's it's what we all do. We're all enthusiasts, and we like to talk about nitrous and things like that. So anytime.
Well, I can tell you by the amount of activity all the way around, between text messages of people that know me personally to chat stuff. It
was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot. So it was really good.
And you were a good guest, man. Like very good, very informative. Awesome.
Stole my questions.
Oh.
And you stole Tad's question, which is a plus.
Well, listen, don't feel bad, because Tad says like 7 words an episode anyway, so it's all good.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me on.
thank you for calling. We
Thanks,
appreciate
Mike.
it. See ya.
No problem.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Dude, that was
I know.
really informative.
He was on point.
That was really informative.
Yep.
I mean, that the progressive controller stuff, I knew.
That's real interesting.
Yeah, I kind of knew how it worked. I mean, it worked like a fuel injector, but I mean, I guess it would make sense that they'd start to make the solenoids better.
Yeah,
and
better and better. Yeah.
Well,
But-
that and a wideband, so it can cut and.
Look at Tad getting his word count up now.
Yeah, now Tad-
because he's getting counted.
Tad
Alan,
knows.
keep on counting there, buddy.
Alan's got the hash marks going.
Well, people don't realize that Tad gets paid based on word count. So
So
he's got to work his check up right now.
But that was a lot of good information.
It was really good. He was good. He was really good.
And I realized, like, after I asked some of those questions, excuse me, got the hiccups, they're not his questions. He makes nitrous kits.
Yeah.
So like the engine side, like kind of like the rod side.
Yep.
But I was interested about the, everybody always say, well, just keep it rich enough and you'll be safe. And I guess that's not the case.
No, I guess you got to just keep it safe to keep it safe.
And the thing that was funny is he said, didn't he say broken ringlands?
Yep.
Did he?
I got to tell you that we had things happen that people said that's what it came from. And I kind of looked at it and said, why the hell would that happen? But like second ringlands broken, why the second? And I mean, those are, I don't know if he would even have answers to those questions, and I shied away from him because to me, that's a very tough question. Somebody,
that could be simple as fluttering a thin ring and getting back to the second.
I just thought of a question I should have asked. I'm so stupid. What about my rotary?
Oh, Ted. Jeez.
That would have been a good question.
Diesels and rotaries, whatever,
Yeah.
I was interested in the diesel. I was wondering how that worked because you couldn't put
diesel
fuel in.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and I mean, you spray that's a mess.
You can't go lean, so.
Yeah, that was I know that they're doing that stuff with diesels, and they had done propane injection and all kinds of stuff, a bunch of friggin' nuts. But yeah, like that broken ring thing, somebody told me it's because when you have a fuel contaminated charge that wouldn't normally burn because it's so rich, if nitrous gets down there, that it can actually explode in the ringlands.
Yeah.
Really?
And I said, that really sounds like a crock of shit.
I think it probably is.
But
no, I think you're fluttering rings and really unloading the top ring completely. And then you're asking the second ring to be a compression ring, which it is sort of, but not really, and you'll get between them.
I have to tell you that I heard that.
And also detonation from oil between the second ring and the oil ring.
Yeah, I can imagine if you start to have rings have a problem, and then the oil gets in there, then you've got oil detonation, and then it's just
shit show.
That's what I mean. I think this whole sequence of events is hard to stop once it gets started. See, that's kind of what
kind of what you were getting at.
It was kind of what I was trying to ask the guy, that like, if you have something like a circle track car, if it pings a little bit, you might be able to transition through it. But I think once a nitrous rattle starts, I think that it's so violent that it never subsides.
No, you can't catch up to it.
No, that's what I was trying to ask the guy. Well, I got to tell you, that was a lot of interesting shit for me.
Yeah, real good.
I mean, I've talked about it, but that thing at Anthony's on a dyno, when you've never done anything like that, and like probably a good nitrous guy's like, what the fuck, you sissy?
The first time.
The first time we pushed the button, we're all looking at each other. And like, what the hell do we do here?
Well, it's because you got a load, right? And all of a sudden you throw 300 foot-pounds at it that it wasn't waiting for, and you kind of lose control, right?
All right, I'm going to go a little bit inside dyno stuff again. Damn it, I wanted to bring my friggin' degree wheel up. I found that big, giant degree wheel. Damn it, I forgot again.
Was it a CV?
Yeah, it's a CV.
Yeah, I thought so.
Big, giant, black, three-blade
cut out
degree wheel. Yeah, I was going to make Tad hold it and take a stupid picture, and I forgot. We had, like, I think I had a button that I was like holding because we weren't set up to run nitrous. And the dyno, if you set the dyno to servo control, there's a recovery time involved. It will overshoot and tend to pull back.
Right.
So now you're going to ask the dyno, so you bring it, and we never really did the servo type testing. We would do a lot of manual sweeps where we'd put the dyno in manual mode, and the takeoff would be over time. It would take load off over time. We had very good luck with that. I know some people will argue. I think Superflow said they don't like it either. But that's how we did it. So what we decided to do is we decided to just load the motor, hold it at like 4,500. We figured the lowest engagement point and hit the button and see where it would go. And, because then you're sort of at fixed load. As the pump speed comes up, the pressure comes up, and it should hold it. Well, I think when we hit it at 4,500, I think it went
6,000.
No, I think it went to like 7,500, like instantly. And like, I think I let go because I didn't know if it was going to stop.
Yeah. It might not have stopped.
No, well, I mean, we got a little more ballsy after that.
Well, yeah, you got better. You had to compensate, but
if people aren't going to understand, if they've never been next to a dyno and you're used to doing like a nice steady pull from point A to point B. That was so violent, so sudden. Your only instinct is it's fucking broke. Like the dyno broke something. It was crazy.
Yep.
It just left such an impression on me.
Yeah, it is crazy.
And when you think about that shit going on in the car, and again, that was probably 400 horsepower, maybe 500.
Yeah, now these guys are talking about 700 horsepower, 1,000 horsepower.
Well, when Nitrous Pete came around, was he already into blowers out of the Nitrous game?
We didn't. The first Nitrous thing I ever dynoed was Anthony's.
Right.
And, our Superflow dyno was the smaller brake, so you weren't able to do,
right,
2,500. I mean, we broke input shafts on the thing with circle track motor. So it's not the very heavy duty one.
Right.
But I don't know. That was something. I wonder if Anthony had that videotaped.
That would have been cool.
I think he did. Because all those guys, there were all the guys that he hung out with, they were always like hanging around watching stuff. I almost think I'm going to have to ask him about that.
That'd be cool.
All right, Tad, anything else? Comment?
I wish you had a videotape of the that Buick engine in there that broke the crankshaft.
The Buick engine?
Was on a Buick too, like a 3-something Buick for
a 3.8 GN?
For
a Grand
Jessel
National?
or whatever, one of those torture test engines.
A Bush car, Bush engine.
You guys just had it pinned or whatever.
How do you remember? First off, you're the guy that suffered a head injury, and why are you remembering things that I don't even remember?
I guess you weren't there that day, but
word count.
Because when you go taking a shit in there in the bathroom next to the diner room and that stuff goes,
all right,
you remember that.
We got to explain that one because Tad is going to, for lack of a better term, drop that one on everybody. Where the dyno room was, the bathroom was kind of directly behind where the exhaust stack went up. Yeah. So the bathroom was an awful place to be when you're making a pull. But I think, I don't know what Tad's referring to, breakage stuff, but I mean, I don't know. I'll have to talk to you and see if I could pry it out of your head.
It was a broken crank or something like
or
that.
Or your head.
It was they're torture testing the new lifters.
The only thing I remember was a motor that was like a 240-inch motor, but it didn't break a crank. But I mean, I think we talked about that. I remember the thing was at like 12.5, and they'd let go of the throttle, and the flywheel was heavy enough that it took like half an hour for the engine to come down. I was like, but I don't remember it ever breaking.
I thought it broke. I heard it broke or something.
No, I think that was something to hit you in the head.
Whatever.
All right. Well, I was happy with this one.
Hell yeah.
And I'm not always happy. I'm relatively miserable. And I kind of started out miserable today.
Yeah, you did. Well, you got better.
A little cranky. Tad, comment? Got anything else? All right, good. Just checking.
Get my word count up. I got my money coming to me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be back Monday next week, and we'll have another guest.
Yep.
See you
later on.